second read. But we very much thank you for joining us today. We put this together the last two election cycles. It's been very popular just in the name of helping us help you as we walk through what it looks like here in the Cowboy State for what AARP members are actually looking for. So what we'll do today is just a quick reminder of who we are, walk through what we've seen in terms of our market research, and then if you've got questions of what that looks like in your campaign, we're happy to kind of walk you through it, as well as then walk you through our own sales pitch of having you join a video voter guide if you haven't already. So for those who are a little bit new to AARP, we put this slide up because sometimes we have people ask us if we are an insurance company. We have people ask us if we're a federal agency, a state agency. We're none of those things. We're actually a membership agency for people age 50 and over. In order to join AARP, you have to be the brightest, the best looking, and give us $20 a year if you're over 50. Nationwide, we really break down into that question of 50% of our members are between 50 and 65. Here in Wyoming, it actually trends much older than that. We're probably 70-30 in terms of 70% over 65 and then 30% 50 to 64. Here in Wyoming, we've got around 75,000 members, and we really have two avenues that we run with. First is the outreach. That's completely apolitical. We have community outreach teams in Cheyenne and Sheridan. Frankly, they're a bunch of do-gooders, and God bless them for it. We love them for it. Some of the programming that they put together are things along the lines of that photo that you see at the top right. That is a shredding event where people can drop off their paper that has personally identifiable information. We'll shred it for free. We'll shred it on site in the name of keeping people safe, because dumpster diving still happens. And then we also do things like the Social Security picnic that you see down at the bottom. We had about 250 people who joined us for a birthday party for Social Security this last summer here in Cheyenne. And then the community action teams do everything from book club, dinner club, hand out information on signing up for Medicare and Social Security. They're really the lifeblood of a lot of what we do. And Jennifer Beyer, our outreach director, is the best in the organization. So if you've got something you're interested in partnering with us on, by all means, feel free to reach out. The other avenue is the advocacy side. That's my job. If you haven't met with me before, I'm our legislative lobbyist here in Cheyenne, and we'll go through some of the things that we actually covered this last year. For example, thank you to some of our legislators who are joining us for supporting us in crypto kiosk regulation. If you're new to that particular topic, there's about 50 crypto ATMs in the state of Wyoming. And what they do is they allow you to put cash into them and then turn that cash into cryptocurrency, which is then able to be transferred around the country. We're finding a problem with that from the standpoint of scammers are telling some of our older adults, for example, you missed jury duty, you need to take $9,000 out of your account at the bank, go to this ATM at the gas station and put it into our account. Otherwise, we're going to arrest you on site. And so naturally, our members do it. We've seen, let's see, in the last year, there were 50 accounts of this particular, reports of this particular crime that took place in Cheyenne for more than $650,000 worth of loss. Our friends up at the Gillette PD talked to their friends at the Campbell County Sheriff's Department. They found over $3 million were stolen using these means in Campbell County alone last year. Since the end of legislative session, Tennessee, Minnesota, Indiana have all banned these machines outright. What we asked for was some regulation that would allow the state banking commissioner to go ahead and draft emergency rules to put together some restrictions on these things. For example, when you use one of these machines, there's a 20% service charge. So right now it's costing a lot to get scammed. We don't think that's right. So one thing that they had put into the rules is if you can prove that the transaction is a scam, you should be able to at least get those fees back. So those rules are on the governor's desk at this point. We're hoping that they're signed sooner than later, but we like what the legislature was able to do this year. Caregiving, we saw increased funding for Wyoming Home Services and Community Choices Waiver. Those are both direct care service programs. for older adults to keep them out of nursing homes. And we'll talk about why that's important. In 2026, we also worked to get an increased rate for Medicaid patients who are transported via ground ambulance for the first time in 15 years. And then we're also working with the Rural Health Transformation to do some regionalization of ground ambulances. We've had, in the last 16 years, we've had 10 ground ambulance services either fold or regionalize into someone else, another agency. We want to make sure that this important service remains viable in Wyoming. And then finally, election topics. We'd like to keep our members voting, and we'd like to keep them doing it as easily as possible. Last year, House Bill 80 allowed for nursing home residents to use an old photo through WYDOT to get a state ID card, not a driver's license, just an ID card. We thought that was great. That was innovative, helps people feel a little bit better about election integrity, and once again, keeps people voting as they can. And that's important for our members because we know that our members have a tendency to vote as much as anyone else does. 85% of voting age persons, that's VAP, stands for voting age persons, between the ages of 70 and 79 voted in 2024. You see actually some pretty good numbers going all the way down to the 18 to 24-year-olds. However, when there's not a presidential election, people are a little less excited to vote. And as a result, you see the upper levels voting in 2022. Older adults did their part. The younger adults, once again, we saw those numbers wane pretty dramatically. So we did ask one of the surveys that we'll show you today is a 2025 member survey. In that, we asked our Wyoming folks, we said, how have you participated? What do you consider to be civic participation? 84% said voting in a presidential election and that they had. And then 79% tell us that they voted in a state election. So the question becoming, how do people like to vote? Now, this is from our 2023 Vital Voices survey, which we'll dig into here in a second. The reason that we put this number up here is because it's of interest to us to remind ourselves that actually 20% of people say they like to vote by mail. And we've really seen that come down to two camps. The first camp says, I'm a little bit older. Things are a little bit more sore. I don't like to stand in line at the polling place. And that's certainly respectable. The other camp tells us, I like to grab my absentee ballot. I like to open up my computer. I like to have the newspaper's voter guide all sitting right there and ready to go so I can make an informed decision on each and every race. And frankly, I'd never thought of that, but that's probably a great idea. So this is kind of what we'll concentrate on for the remainder of the conversation today. This story came up in the USA Today 2 weeks ago, and the first line of that story is what we hear from members more and more. And this is something that is really going to permeate through our conversation in the member survey data that we have. That line is, if there's one thing Americans fear more than death, it might be outliving their savings. And so what you're going to hear the rest of the way is pocketbook issue, pocketbook issue, pocketbook issue. In 2023, we did a Vital Voices survey. This is a survey where we send 700 interviews into the field, people ages 45 and over. We are getting ready to do another one this summer. Unfortunately, we'll not be ready in time for campaign season. But there's sort of the methodology behind this particular survey. One nice thing about AARP is we have a very deep bench. And so the people that are actually putting together these surveys for us are on staff and they're PhD level statisticians. So we're able to model our survey after Wyoming's population, whether it be political ideology, whether it be men, women, voting status, things along those lines. Here's the biggest takeaway, and this is something that we use consistently. The question was, for each of the following statements, please tell me if you would be more likely or less likely to vote for a candidate in Wyoming that advocated for this position. Number one is expanded access to quality, affordable, long-term care for the elderly from home care to nursing homes. That's number one. I'm told when we do these surveys, that is always number one. Number two really popped though, protecting residents from fraud and scams. They're looking for a candidate who can protect residents from fraud and scams. When we did this before, that one was in the 70s. And so we saw a huge huge kick in that particular category. Increased opportunity for Medicare savings, not a whole lot you can do with that at the state level. Lower property taxes, I'll remind us that this is 2023 when this came out, so it's a little bit before we really dug into the property tax relief issue. Increased access to affordable housing comes from our members having an interest in getting out of the 3, 4, 5 bedroom house that they had when they had the kids and moving down to something in the way of a 2 to 3 bedroom bungalow. In that same 2023 survey, we also asked the questions about, which is important to you personally, specifically on health issues. Now, the light blue that you see, that bar is from 2020, same questions asked as they were in 2023, which is the dark blue. Where you see an arrow going up is statistically significant. Once again, where we saw the biggest growth came in the pocketbook issues. Drugs. Our next slide, once again, we asked that question about caring for loved ones. For each of the following issues, please indicate how important this is to you personally. We saw, once again, high numbers in terms of caring for loved ones and staying in the home as you get older. That one actually bumped 3% to 87% of those who were asked believe that to be very important or extremely important. Independence, once again, 84%, that's up from 81%. And then we saw a 10% increase in having affordable options for housing in your community. The next slide, this one we're going to get a little more granular in 2026. I'm glad we had the question. I'm interested to see more about it, what we find out in 2026. But this kind of rings true with what Pew Research tells us, that older adults very much still rely on television news. Generally speaking, local, but quite a bit, folks are a little bit interested in the national stuff as well, the TV cable channels specifically. So we will be getting more granular, but the takeaway is TV news appears to be, by and large, how people are finding out about what's going on news-wise in their community. In terms of being informed in the community, social media was at 26%, and newspaper at 26% in 2023. And I'm interested to see those maintaining those numbers once again, because we know we've seen large growth amongst our members in the world of social media. So last year, AARP nationally did a member survey, and they were able to carve out the Wyoming results and send those our way. When we asked them, why do you renew your membership specifically in Wyoming? We heard Social Security and Medicare efforts, prescription drug pricing efforts. Once again, the pocketbook issues are popping. But then number 3, consumer fraud. We see fraud once again jumping to the forefront. We asked them what we do well, and they said we ranked high in the categories of cares about members, nonpartisan, honest, and trustworthy, which gives us a nice warm fuzzy at night. We go into that question about economic concerns. Social Security solvency, and that one is 1, 2, and 3 when we talk to our older adult members too. Once again, number 2, fraud and identity theft. Tough to understate what that means nationally and what we've been seeing, especially in the state. We had a conversation with one of our not nursing home, but our senior center directors just Monday afternoon. And she talked about 3 scams that had hit within the last couple of weeks with her people alone. And so this is a problem that we know is out there. We have some ideas, things that could be helpful as we move forward, and we'll be happy to talk about those too. So work in retirement. This particular slide we jumped up because as we're talking about pocketbook issues, the part that jumps out to me, over half the members in Wyoming are concerned about the security of their retirement plans. Nearly half are concerned about having enough money for retirement. So once again, we see that finance is becoming an issue. For those of you who are working federal campaigns, and I'm not sure if we have any with us on this particular event or not, Uh, Social Security obviously is a big issue. Everyone says it's important, and we have the data to kind of back that up. If you want your mind to be blown, this is the part that really jumped out to me. Reliance, specifically on the percentage of family income coming from Social Security. In Wyoming, we have 48,000 people for whom Social Security makes up at least 50% of the income. We have 21,000 people for whom Social Security makes up at least 90% of their income. When you consider the average annual Social Security payment is $24,282, we have a lot of people trying to live on just a little bit of money. So one issue that has not been out of the news over the course of the last several years is the question of property tax. And so what that means specifically here in Wyoming, this is from the 2023 survey. And this holds pretty true with my experience. So 2023, that's before we really got into the property tax relief work in a big way. Before the session, I probably took 5 to 10 calls a week, every week, from people that had questions about property tax. And this holds pretty true to what I was getting at that point. About 41% of those that we talked to is the dark blue, not very concerned or not concerned at all when we ask them, how concerned are you about being able to pay your property taxes on your primary residence over the next 5 years? Then on the other side, you've got 36% that are extremely concerned or very concerned. The other 21% are somewhat concerned. And so this really runs the gamut. We had people that would tell us, I want roads, I want good schools, I want all the things that property tax goes ahead and pay for. And on the flip side of that, we had just about as many that says, I'm scared to death, what do we do? So that said, for those of you who are a little bit new to the process, property tax relief has been very much, it's been front and center during the last few legislative sessions. In 2023, I believe it was, we put a 4% cap on property tax increases year over year. And then we did the 25% reduction in 2024. The long-term homeowners refund is for those who have paid property tax for 25 years or more in Wyoming. It doesn't have to be on the same house. It does have to be residential. And you're age 65 and over. At that point, you can apply for 50% off your property tax. The program that we like the best is actually the property tax refund program. The reason we like it is it's means tested. So, it's also backfilled, so you're able to keep the schools and the counties held harmless a little bit. And frankly, it goes to those who are really need it and are targeted within that way. Our friends at the Taxpayers Association shared this information with us. When we look at what it looks like to see the impact of those particular exemptions in 2025, on the left-hand side is the amount of assessed value exempted. The right-hand side is the property tax that was not collected as a result of these programs. You've got the 4% cap. The 65 and 25 is long-term homeowners. And then the 25% is the homeowners exemption that ran last year. We're probably going to see the homeowners exemption be a little bit less of a decrease this year from the standpoint of in 2024, 2024, I believe, you just got the exemption. In 2025, you had to attest that your primary residence was owner occupied. And you did that by going to an online site by the Wyoming Department of Revenue and making that attestation there. Now, despite all of our efforts, despite all of the efforts of everyone else, not everybody got the memo, as it were. And so there are some folks that I think it was in late April, we thought there were still probably about 70,000 homes that were eligible for the 25% that hadn't yet signed up. And so we'll probably see a little bit less in terms of that reduction next year. Here's where the reductions hit by county. And that far right-hand column is the estimated tax dollars exempted with all of the property tax relief programs that we saw. So we saw about $196 million exempted. Teton County took the brunt of that with $43 million exempted, followed by Laramie County at $27 million and Natrona County at $20 million. Finally, on the property tax piece, we remind ourselves where that money actually goes. And we're once again, none of it goes to the state. It goes to K-12 education, and this particular graph shows year over year 2024 collections, as well as 2025 collections. First 68% goes to the state, goes to the education for students K-12, and then counties, the next 17%, special districts 9%, and then community colleges 4%, and then finally municipalities at 2%. Once again, I'm happy to share this information with you after we're done. Okay, now one thing that we have heard from a few different people is the concept that older adults are being taxed out of their homes. We certainly agree that for some, property tax is it's problematic. It can be more than they can afford. However, we want to be sure that we just understand both sides of this conversation too, and that property taxes do impact senior services for the positive in some ways. Specifically, we look at local transportation, which is largely federal funds. However, that other 27% becomes local match. In a lot of cases, comes from local property taxes. We see the same thing with home delivered meals and congregate meals that you eat at senior centers. Once again, that requires a 10% local match. And then Wyoming Home Services, we talked about this a little bit ago. Wyoming Home Services is a program that allows for direct care support for older adults. That's 71% funded by the state, 21% from local matching funds through property taxes that we use to try to keep people out of the nursing home as long as we can. So our tax relief policy is very simple, very straightforward. And in fact, every policy we have is actually very easily accessed. Just Google AARP policy book. It's available. It's transparent. Anyone can see it that's interested. But really, that first line property tax relief should be equitable, cost-effective, and targeted to homeowners with low and moderate incomes burdened by their property tax bill. That's really where any property tax relief piece is going to live for AARP to get us to offer our support. Caregiving is an issue. Caregiving is sort of our North Star. It's the one thing that we really put the most work into because it's such an important thing. Aging in Wyoming, now this is something we all inherently know, that we're getting a lot older in a hurry. One thing that folks may not know who are a little bit new to running for office for the first time is that if you end up in a nursing home level of care as determined by a public health nurse, if you are at a level of Medicaid financial need, you can actually go into long-term care on Wyoming's Medicaid program. And what that means is you can either move into a skilled nursing home or you can receive home services through Wyoming Medicaid. We have, for a number of years, advocated very strongly for healthy home services, because what we found is it's very easy for us to spend a lot of money before we realize what's going on. So if we move you into a skilled nursing facility on the Wyoming Medicaid program, it comes at a cost of roughly $7,000 to $8,000 per person per month. Now, on the flip side, if we can treat you through home services, which home health, some transportation, chore services, some bathing, things like that, the average cost per person per month to the state is $1,800. And so we really, really work towards keeping people in the home as much as we can. Right now, we know we're spending around $150 million a year addressing people in long-term care. So what that means, especially on the federal side, is we've supported for years a caregiver tax credit. Obviously, that's not necessarily a thing here in Wyoming because we don't have state income tax, and so it's a little tough to get a credit on that piece of it. But in Wyoming, we know that 64,000 caregivers are adults, are caregivers of adults. And back in, I lost a slide. And that's actually an oddly important issue nationally. So in 2023, we had our polling folks put together a survey of 1,200 voters aged 50 and over. We found 40 districts labeled by Cook Political Report as leans or toss-ups. and we talk to them about caregiving. What does that specifically do? Here's what we found out. This kind of blew our mind a little bit. So the question was, if the A Republican or B Democrat candidate for Congress supported the policies that you see on the left, would you be more likely to vote for the Republican candidate or Democratic candidate for Congress? Now you see the one that popped the most on both sides was expanding senior services to help seniors live independently and in their homes instead of a nursing home. This has traditionally kind of been considered something of a Democratic issue. And so they were able to get a bump, but on the Republican side, it took an even bigger bump, one that we probably weren't expecting to that level. Then once again, you get into the other caregiving sides of this, specifically the providing an unpaid family caregiver with tax credit and cracking down on drug companies that unfairly extend their patents to keep prices high. But the big takeaway is caregiving is a sneaky, quiet issue that really tends to move the needle. And we remind ourselves, this goes back to that first slide that I showed you from our 2023 work, that once again, this matches with what we're looking for here in the state of Wyoming, where voters are asking for increased access to quality, affordable, long-term care for the elderly, from home care to nursing home care. So if you're looking at how to make that actionable in your campaign, support of WISE, that's the Wyoming Home Services Program, that did get a $1.6 million bump. And so if you're someone who was already in office this last year, that would be a great thing to bring up, a great thing to mention if you were supportive of that particular program. Senior centers, there's a $10.5 million biennial spend to the state's senior centers. It goes to the Wyoming Senior Services Board, which then has a formula that they're able to sprinkle the money to depending on the services that you offer. I can tell you, I think it's been 8 years since that particular fund has seen a bump. And so if you're looking for a way to vocalize support of senior services, that's not a bad one. We also have the Community Choices Waiver, which got a nice bump this year. That's for those folks who are in a nursing home level of care and also need that Medicaid level of funding. We're able to once again address them through home services because we've had that legislative support. So we very much appreciate that. And the increased ride and adult day reimbursement piece, that comes from a program that used to exist here in Cheyenne. If you're familiar with the PACE program, that was a program that we had for a number of years that would allow older adults to get picked up in the morning, go to PACE a few days a week, which was basically a adult day setting. But then they also had medical appointments and other transportation availabilities there too, as well as 2 meals. And so when that program shut down due to a loss of federal and state funding, the Department of Health went through and did sort of a customer survey on that and said, hey, tell me what you liked about PACE. And, the medical stuff was all fine, but what they found was people really liked having a little bit of adult day availability, as well as the ability to get a ride. And so the Department of Health brought up a couple of years the idea of increasing the ride and adult daycare reimbursement rate to senior centers if they would offer perhaps a 3-day-a-week adult day piece. And the response was strong. We just haven't gotten that necessarily across the finish line as yet. But it's something that's sitting out there if you want to try to bone up on those bona fides around senior services. So the last thing I'll bring up is something we've been shooting the heck out of lately. It's called our Video Voter Guide series. Done it the last 2 years, the last 2 election cycles. We'll do it again this year. The process is pretty simple. So we have 3 questions we ask you. I know you're getting 1 million questionnaires right now. We try to make this as easy and time respective as we can. You get 3 questions. For each question, you get 1:30 to answer the question. And then at the end, we give you 2 minutes to talk about whatever you want to. If you want to talk about the Cubs' 10-game losing streak, you're welcome to. Most people like to talk about their candidacy, though, and we recommend that. The whole thing takes about 10 minutes to shoot, start to finish. Here are your questions. Oh, these actually, I take that back. These are the federal questions for those who are doing this. The state questions are a little different than that. Specifically, let me open one here. Here are your state questions. The first one, we know property taxes. Wyoming residents are concerned about rising property taxes. While property taxes can be a burden for some, they also fund critical state and local services. These services include local transportation, home delivered meals, and home health services that keep older adults aging in place. If elected, how would you balance the need for relief with ensuring critical services stay in place? The second question that we have is around caregiving, and this is pretty simple. We know that survey data suggests 80% of older adults wish to age in their homes and communities as they get older. If elected, what would you do to ensure older Wyomingites can stay in their homes and communities as long as they can? And then the third and final question, AARP's Vital Voices survey points out that in the 2025 member survey show that our members are seeking candidates who will help protect them from fraud and scams. In recent years, we've seen scammers evolve to using crypto ATMs and deed fraud to separate Wyomingites from their cash. How would you work to provide older adults from their fraud and scams? So those are the three questions that we asked, and we give you 2 minutes. What we do with that afterwards is that we will put this on our AARP website. We also put it on Facebook, so it's easy for you to share. But the other things that we do, and here's where we think the value is we'll put both you and your competitors' video on one page, and then we will share that page to Cowboy State Daily through an ad buy that we do. They will promote that through their morning coffee break. That's the dispatch you get on the first thing in the morning, which will allow people to click on that, look at your video, look at your opponent's video. And then the final thing that we do is we'll send those 2 videos in an email to each of the AARP members that we have in your district. So we'd like to think, and as much as we can, there's certainly a value to doing what we're doing, and hopefully it's the best 10 minutes you spend all election season. So with that said, that is everything I have, and I'd be happy to take any questions or offer any thoughts. One thing that we didn't talk about on the fraud and scam piece is that question about what is there to be said about that. We talked about the crypto ATM piece. This year, something else that's popping, and I see Senator Case's beautiful face on here. We have just started talking about deed theft, which seems to be a bit of a hot topic in the state. We're still developing what that looks like and what we can do for Wyomingites on that particular topic, but that's something that is certainly in play as well. So that said, does anyone have any questions or any thoughts, any other information we can get your way? All right, Trey, I see you got your hand raised.
Thank you so much. Looking at the data, which is great to drive good policy decision making, it seems to be that our older residents are getting a lot of their news through the television, which we know we don't have like a true, Wyoming locally owned station. And so just help me understand the disconnect between you guys send out amazing fraud alerts, right? And those emails are so informative, but how does that translate, or how can we get that translated into television networks or venues where more seniors can see those and be able to absorb and use that information?
Great question, Trey. We actually have a meeting next week where we had kicked around an idea of partnering with some of our law enforcement friends, as well as our banker friends. The Banking Association and those members have been outstanding partners when it comes to how do we get together to get these scam alerts out there. And so we've had a few conversations, and I think we're going to kick back get this going again, specifically around, can we put these scam alerts on TV, specifically during the news hour. And so hopefully you'll see something sooner than later on that front. But you're right, and this is exactly where we took that idea from. Great question. Okay, and if anyone is dying to do a video voter guide, by all means, put your name in the chat or just send me a little bit of information thereafter, and I would be happy to get back with you and get you scheduled. Once again, just as a reminder,
Hey,
we have to
Tom.
have 2 in a race before we can have 1. And so if we get yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but I see that Bill over here is trying to get your attention with a question. I wanted to help you get to him.
Yeah, Tom.
Ahead.
You hear me good?
I got you, buddy.
Okay. Touching base on that scam thing, there's a couple things that pop in my mind. I've had those scam guys come at me, both personally and as a member of a board for a foundation where they were trying to get me to vector off some foundation stuff. But what comes to mind with those kind of scams is if there was a point of contact at the AARP, for instance, that somebody could just pick up the phone and call you guys and say, here's what I just got, tell me the truth, that might kill things very quickly. In one case, they were it was a personal thing. They were trying to get me to get some of those money cards and do something with them. And I ended up reporting it to the Cheyenne Police Department because that's where we ended up. And the police person that I talked to said, well, there's not too much we can do. But the point you're interested in for the older people is, can they quickly assess whether there's some truth to what's going on? The second thing that I have wondered about is the transfer of property, where somebody puts in a thing with a signature on it and a notary and transfers it out of your name, and then you end up with, if what's on TV is to be believed, you end up with mortgages on the property that you don't know about. Well, there's 2 things I think could be done. First, the county clerk, when they get one of those documents, could be required to pick up the phone and call the property owner and say, did you, because there ought to be some indication of underlying money transfer, which there isn't in those cases. But the second thing is, if you go to court having been victimized and a judge makes a determination that it was fraud and returns the property to your name, those people that then profited from whatever transfer was going on would be out the money. That would in turn reflect in them being more careful who they lent money to based on those kind of property transfers. So I think there's a couple of easy solutions, at least for Wyoming. And I think the AARP ought to take a look at something like that.
Thanks, Bill. 2 questions, 2 good questions. So the first question you were talking about in terms of what's it look like and how quick could we get somebody to go ahead and call us and say, is this a scam or not? The Sheridan Police have a scam line specifically for that. And that's another conversation we're going to have with our friends here in law enforcement, is how to kind of put that together, because what a great service. And Liz Schaefer, who's our contact with Sheridan Police up there, she says she loves having those calls. She loves the opportunity to save someone and the opportunity to kind of walk through someone. Okay, here's right. They put an artificial deadline on. That's a red flag. You got this out of the blue. That's a red flag. And right. So she likes that piece of it. And so I think it's something that has some legs. And so we'll keep kicking that around. Jen Byer was nice enough to throw in our Fraud Watch helpline number into the chat. This is a 1-800 number that it's free. For anyone, and you can use it a couple different ways. If you think you've been scammed, they'll walk you through how to get back on your feet, how to get yourself protected moving forward. Unfortunately, 9 times out of 10, the money's gone, but we can help you take next steps to get everything resecured. That's free. You don't have to be 50 and over. You don't have to be an AARP member. Just use it. Second question was on the deed theft conversation, and we had a good conversation. We had a very good conversation at Corporations Committee. We'll be interested to see where it goes. There was really 2 ideas that were kind of kicked out. One, we have some model legislation around it that we've worked with the realtors, the title companies on. I'm learning more about it myself because it's a new concept. But the issue was something that was absolutely brought forward by a number of people. In fact, Senator Case, I don't know, was it 4 different people that asked for it to be an interim topic? And it was a group of 4 groups, or a group of 4 people. I don't know that you'd get in the same room for any other topic. And so it's something that showed us anyway that there's broad appeal around having the conversation. So thank you. I appreciate it. And we're working on it. That's the short answer.
Okay, good enough. Sometimes those take a while, but it's like that thing about a property transfer. If a judge returned the property to the lawful owner, somebody's going to be out money, somebody that profited from the fraudulent transaction. And if we could make them be more careful what they do, it would foreshorten that.
Well said. Very well said. Any other questions before we wrap for today? It's nice to see so many familiar faces, so many friends, so many new faces. Thanks, folks, for being willing to jump out and give this a run. We're looking forward to working with you one way or another.
Tom, this is Shannon. You don't know
Hi,
me.
Shannon.
I'm sitting up in the far northwest country. Look behind me. I actually went online and just inadvertently came across some of the interviews that you did with people from Natrona County. And I was so impressed with that. It was really helpful for me as a voter. But I am jumping in the race for House. And so I don't fully understand the format for this. Could we talk offline after this to maybe
Absolutely.
you could give me some links or something to
Absolutely.
help me understand this? Because it sounds
And
like
Shannon,
a really great resource.
which race are you in?
House District 23.
23. Okay, very nice.
Right. And Trey,
Yeah,
I see.
I'll reach out to you.
Yeah, and Trey, I see that you're in the Senate or House.
She's House.
Which is it? House. Very good. Okay. Yes, if you would, please, Tom, I appreciate it.
Happy to. Very nice. Lisa, I see your hands up. And you're on mute.
I had
my
to
friend.
unmute me. All right, there we go. My name is Lisa Kinney, and I wanted to say hi to Cale Case, but it looks like he's off. But you had mentioned that 20% of the voter age people like to vote by mail. And I'm wondering if you have contacted our congressional effort and our president where there are efforts to stop voting by mail. Has AARP done some advocacy in that direction?
Lisa, that's a good question. I'll tell you, I had a conversation with the Secretary of State about it a couple of weeks ago. Actually, a couple of days ago, now that I think about it. It's been a long week. And we have that conversation just to explain why people are interested in voting by mail. And so they certainly are aware of our stance and our feelings on it. And here's to hoping that we're able to maintain that possibility for people.
I think it's really important for older people, also for people who go overseas, for our vets. There are a lot of people who like to vote by mail, and cutting that off as an option, I think, is not a good idea. And I'm hoping that you guys will stand up and say we need to continue with it. Thank you. You bet.
Thanks for the conversation. Once again, I'm seeing people that are interested in being scheduled for video voter guides. Once you give me a thumbs up that you want to be scheduled, I will try to contact your opponent and see if they're willing to jump in and do the same, because once again, we have to have 2 in a race in order to shoot 1. So, Rob, I see you, buddy.
Hey, thanks. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah. As far as that, the voting and the mail-in ballots, when you do a questionnaire, the older people tend to like to do that. They don't want to, like you said before, don't want to stand in line. But is there a question along those lines when you do a survey that there's been so much talk about fraudulent voting that it's turning people off to go vote, and I don't think that's right. In Wyoming, we don't have that problem, but I was wondering if you could design a question to see if that's really bothering people.
Good question, Rob. Let me write that down. We do have our final meeting tomorrow for the 2026 voter, I'm sorry, not voter, the Vital Voices survey. I didn't see anything specific to that in the question bank, but we'll see if we can get something drafted. It's at least worthy of a discussion. I appreciate that. And I got a BW Boyd, my man. How are you? Boyd, I see your hand up, but we got you on mute.
Yes, I was on mute too. I'm sorry. Old habit. As you're talking about a questionnaire and kind of your topics, is there any way that something I've run into with some of my clients is a great deal of uncertainty about resources that may exist to, help them, the services and keep them in their home and the various goals you've got. And I've always wondered if there would be a way to get a central clearinghouse or maybe some sort of, maybe at the county level or nonprofit as kind of maybe an orientation or a guide when it's time for somebody to sign up for Medicare, Medicaid, all the services, that are out there. Is there any way you could get at whether that is an issue for most of your members, just an awareness, and whether that'd be helpful in your questionnaire you're putting together, so we could see whether or not that's something to tackle, or maybe you guys already make sure members are well informed. I don't know.
That's an interesting question, Boyd. And for those who are unaware, Boyd is a bankruptcy attorney here in Cheyenne. And so that's, I think the direction he's coming from is just understanding, when it gets to that point, how it works.
And I used to do some Social Security disability appeals, so I ran into that quite frequently with people whose health was falling apart.
Okay. Yeah, well said. We'll kick that around. It's a good idea. It's a real good idea. I'm a little curious how we'd make it work. And I know our friends at Medicaid Determination, ordinarily, the best place to start, where we tell people is the best place to start when you get to this point of needing those services, is your local senior center, because in a lot of cases, they tend to be the conduit for most of these services. And so they'll know what's available there. And then 211 also is able to kind of walk through what's available. Although hopefully we've done a good job of getting with them to just explain, what is available and then where to go. But they have recently hired a long-term care, not ombudsman, but a navigator. And so I think that's a good step in the right direction, especially for those in Wyoming to probably run them through 211, and then you can get a little more granular at the local level. Okay.
And is there a way to find out whether or not what we've got now is working, or if this is an issue that needs to be brought up?
We'll talk about that in the question conversation. I'll tell you, we did one a couple years ago in 2023. One of the questions was who pays for nursing home care? And overwhelmingly, people said Medicare, which is incorrect. Medicare will help you with a short-term rehab stint, but it's very time limited. And then you move into Medicaid. And so, frankly, a lot of people use Medicare and Medicaid a little bit, all in the same. And we make sure people understand Medicare is federal insurance for people 65 and over, and Medicaid is low-income insurance for largely children's and mothers, and then older adults over the age of 65 who are looking for long-term care. And so those are not, unfortunately, interchangeably. So it's probably worth at least a consideration. So I've got that written down. Good question, Boyd. All right, well, folks, I think I'll let you go, but thank you very much for your time. I know it's really valuable this time of year. It's big stuff, and we will. I'm seeing a bunch of want to do the interviews. I will get with each of you specifically, and I'll get you some times and dates. Bill, we've already got you scheduled. You're coming on Friday, buddy, at 2:00. So one of those things. But thank you very much, everyone, for your time, and good luck on the trail. By all means, let us know what you hear from older adults. The more we know, the more we can help. Thank you much.